Actor Jan Michael Vincent had it all: looks, fame, money and incredible talent. But years of drugs, alcohol and trouble with the law saw his acting career dry up and put his life at risk.
Some stars burn bright and fade fast, while others flicker out slowly in the darkness. Jan Michael Vincent was once the most beautiful face in Hollywood, the highest paid actor on television, and a name that promised endless tomorrows. But those tomorrows never came the way anyone expected. This is the story of the awful ending and tragic death of Jan Michael Vincent and his wife. The Golden Boy. Denver, Colorado, July 15, 1944. Jan Michael Vincent entered the world with the kind of looks that would later make him a household name. Square-jawed, blue-eyed, with an effortless charm that couldn't be taught in any acting class. His father, Lloyd, was a B-25 bomber pilot during World War II, stationed in Denver in 1941, and he had married Jan Michael's mother, Doris, when she was just 16 years old. It was a different time, a different world. The Vincent family had its own dark history. Jan Michael's uncle was shot to death by a deputy sheriff. Two other uncles were convicted of bank robbery. His grandfather and cousin were arrested for bank robbery and assault with a deadly weapon, leaving Lloyd alone at age 12. This family history of violence and rebellion against authority ran deep in Jan Michael's blood. He grew up watching his father in the army being told what to do and when to do it, and that mistrust of authority would color both his best performances and his worst decisions. He had siblings too, a sister, Jacqueline, born in 1947, and a brother, Christopher, born in 1952. Jan Michael was the oldest, the one who would carry the family name into Hollywood, though no one knew that yet. He wasn't looking for stardom when it found him. After finishing a stint in the California Army National Guard, where he worked as a helicopter mechanic, a talent scout was struck by his all-American looks. Just like that, Hollywood came calling. It was 1967, and Jan Michael was 23 years old. He had the kind of face that casting directors dream about, the kind that photographs well from every angle, the kind that makes audiences lean forward in their seats. His first film role came that same year in a Robert Conrad movie called The Bandits. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. Small parts followed, guest spots on shows everyone watched back then. Dragnet, Lassie, Bonanza, Gunsmoke. He appeared in Danger Island segments of The Banana Splits, a kids show that seems almost quaint now. But even in those early days, you could see it. The camera loved him. In the late 1960s, Vincent was signed to Universal Studios, a major milestone for any young actor. The studio saw potential in him, saw something beyond just another handsome face. They cast him in their productions, gave him opportunities to learn the craft, to work with established stars.
Here. Huh? Why do you live out here?
Hey, why not?
To find his footing in an industry that chewed up and spit out countless wannabes. By 1969, he was appearing alongside John Wayne and Rock Hudson in The Undefeated. His name in the credits read Michael Vincent then, not yet the Jan Michael that would become famous. He was still finding himself, still learning the craft, still believing that talent and good looks were enough. The Vietnam War was raging, the 1960s were ending, and Jan Michael Vincent was just beginning. The Rise. The 1970s belonged to Jan Michael Vincent. That decade saw him transform from a promising newcomer into a legitimate movie star. His first starring television role came in the fall of 1969 in the primetime soap opera The Survivors, alongside Lana Turner and George Hamilton. The series was canceled mid-season, but it didn't matter. Jan Michael was getting noticed. In 1970, he was praised for his role in the TV movie Tribes, also known as the soldier who declared peace in some markets. He starred opposite Darren McGavin as a hippie draftee who wouldn't follow the rules in Marine boot camp. It was the kind of rebellious role that suited him perfectly, the anti-authority stance that came naturally given his family history and personal temperament.
You're the only one who has a chance to get it back.
Why didn't Archangel stay to tell me himself?
Then came 1971 and Going Home, where he appeared opposite Robert Mitchum and Brenda Vaccaro. The performance earned him his first Golden Globe nomination for Best Supporting Actor. He was being noticed now, not just for his looks, but for something deeper, something real. He could act. He could hold his own opposite Hollywood legends. The following year brought The Mechanic, where he played Steve McKenna, an apprentice hitman to Charles Bronson's aging professional killer. There was something in that role, a smirking danger, a young man learning violence from an older master. The film was directed by Michael Winner and became one of the defining action films of the era. Critics took notice. Audiences took notice. John Michael Vincent was no longer just another pretty face. Also, in 1972, he appeared in the made-for-TV love story Sandcastles. The range he was showing, from violent action to romantic drama, suggested an actor with real versatility. He worked constantly through those years, building a filmography that was impressive by any standard. In 1973, he starred as a Tarzan-like character in Disney's The World's Greatest Athlete with Tim Conway and John Amos. That same year, he appeared in an episode of Marcus Welby, MD, called Catch a Ring That Isn't There, playing Richie, an alcoholic teenager. The irony of that role, playing an addict when his own addictions were already taking root, would become clear only later. He also appeared in the made-for-TV movie Deliver Us from Evil in 1973, playing Nick Fleming opposite George Kennedy. In 1974 came Buster and Billy, wherein he played the anti-hero Buster Lane and startled audiences with his full frontal nudity. It was a bold choice, the kind that showed he was willing to take risks, to push boundaries, to be more than just a safe Hollywood leading man. Bite the Bullet arrived in 1975, a well-regarded film about an endurance horse race where he appeared opposite Gene Hackman, James Coburn, and Candice Bergen. That same year brought White Line Fever, where he played Carol Jo Hummer, a rebel trucker fighting corruption. The trucker movie became a surprise hit, tapping into the CB radio craze and the romantic image of the independent driver fighting against a corrupt system.
In exchange for using Airwolf on official business. Oh, it's the only way we're gonna get to use it.
Baby Blue Marine followed in 1976, a war film directed by John D. Hancock that also starred Glynis O'Connor. He also appeared in Shadow of the Hawk that year, co-starring Marilyn Hassett. In 1977, he headlined the post-apocalyptic science fiction film Damnation Alley, based on Roger Zelazny's novel. The film didn't quite work, but Jan Michael's star power was undeniable. Then came 1978, and two films that would define him forever. First was Big Wednesday, John Milius's surfing epic alongside William Catt and Gary Busey. Jan Michael played Matt Johnson, a self-destructive surfer chasing waves and running from responsibility. The role hit close to home in ways that wouldn't become clear until later. The film wasn't a commercial success when it was released, but over the years it became a cult classic, beloved by surfers and film fans alike. Jan Michael did his own surfing in the film, drawing on years of experience riding waves all over the world. That same year, he appeared in Hooper with Burt Reynolds, playing a young stuntman named Ski. The movie was about the old guard meeting the new, about men who risked their bodies for the sake of a shot, about the price of living dangerously. Jan Michael was 34 years old and at the absolute peak of his powers. He was handsome, talented, in demand, and making good money. The world was his. In 1980, he starred in Defiance, a gang-themed drama that received only limited release. In the film, he and Danny Aiello co-starred as Manhattan residents who fight back against gang members terrorizing their neighborhood. That same year, he appeared in The Return, a science fiction film released directly to television and video. In 1981 came Hard Country, where he co-starred with Kim Basinger. Even in a romantic drama, he brought that same rebellious energy, that same refusal to play by the rules. By the early 1980s, Jan Michael Vincent had proven himself as a legitimate movie star. He had range, he had presence, he had box office appeal. Everything pointed toward an even bigger future. The Winds of War. In 1983, John Michael took on one of the most prestigious roles of his career, The Winds of War, an epic ABC miniseries based on Herman Wouk's best-selling novel about World War II, featured an all-star cast. John Michael played Byron Henry, the rebellious son of a naval officer, and he held his own against acting heavyweights. The role earned him his second Golden Globe nomination. It should have been a launching pad to even greater things. Instead, it became a high watermark, the last time Jan Michael Vincent would be taken seriously as a dramatic actor, because everything was about to change. Airwolf. January 1984. Three major networks all launched helicopter-themed series at the same time, trying to capitalize on the success of the previous summer's theatrical film, Blue Thunder. CBS premiered a new action series called Airwolf. The premise was simple but irresistible to audiences of that era. A high-tech military helicopter, stolen and hidden away, used for covert missions by a mysterious pilot named Stringfellow Hawk, and Jan Michael Vincent was that pilot. The show was created by Donald P. Bellisario, a master of television action who would go on to create shows like Quantum Leap, JAG, and NCIS. Ernest Borgnine co-starred as Dominic Santini, bringing gravitas and warmth to balance John Michael's brooding intensity. The character of Stringfellow Hawk was stiff, controlled, a man who could pull off impossible aerobatic maneuvers in a supersonic helicopter, but also played the cello in his mountain cabin. Finding the humanity in that character took work. In a 1984 interview with the Associated Press, Jan Michael talked about the challenge of loosening up his character. "The character is stiff," he said, "but as we've gone along, we've been able to loosen him some. Now you'll sometimes see him crack a smile and say something funny. Even Clint Eastwood is mellowing, although I'll never be Burt Reynolds." He also talked about his love of the water in that interview. He had spent 3 months after wrapping The Winds of War sailing the Caribbean. He was a longtime surfer who had traveled the world chasing waves. "I was a traveling surfer for years," he said. "I've been all over the world surfing. I'll be 40 in July and I still like to surf." But Airwolf was an immediate hit. The helicopter itself became a star, a modified Bell 222 painted sleek black and equipped with an array of fictional weapons and capabilities that thrilled audiences. The action was intense, the special effects were cutting edge for television at the time, and Jan Michael Vincent became one of the highest paid actors in American television, earning a reported $200,000 per episode. In 1984, that was an astronomical sum, unheard of for a television actor. He was on top of the world. Fan mail poured in. Ratings were strong. The show was a phenomenon. Anytime a helicopter flew anywhere near a school, kids would scream, "It's Airwolf." The show tapped into something in the cultural zeitgeist of the mid-1980s, a time of Cold War tensions and American technological superiority, of lone heroes fighting for justice. Except John Michael wasn't on top of the world. Not really. Behind the scenes, everything was falling apart. The demons. The truth was that Jan Michael Vincent had been fighting demons for years. Cocaine, alcohol. Arrests for possession started in 1977 and continued through 1978 and 1979. Bar brawls in 1984 and 1985. A felony assault charge in 1986, though he was acquitted when his attorney argued the woman had tripped and fallen on a telephone cord. While filming Airwolf, Jan Michael openly admitted he was seeking help for drug and alcohol problems. The show that made him the highest paid actor on television was also the show he struggled to show up for, the show where his addictions began to overtake his talent. His personal life was a wreckage of failed relationships and accusations of violence. His first marriage to Bonnie Poorman lasted from 1968 to 1977 and produced one daughter, Amber, born in 1972. His second marriage to Joanne Robinson began in 1986 and ended in 1998 when she filed a restraining order, alleging he had abused her throughout their marriage. In 1988, Vincent was arrested for drunk driving, but avoided jail by entering rehab. In 2000, a $374,000 default judgment was made against him after his former girlfriend alleged he had physically assaulted her and caused her to miscarry their child. The pattern was clear to anyone paying attention. A man spiraling downward, unable or unwilling to stop, burning through relationships and opportunities with equal abandon. Airwolf ran for 3 seasons from 1984 to 1987, though the show continued for one more season on USA Network with a different cast. Jan Michael was gone by then, and so was any chance at reclaiming the career he'd once had. The long fall. After Airwolf ended, the offers dried up. Not completely, but close enough. The A-list roles were gone. The studio projects disappeared. Jan Michael Vincent found himself appearing in low-budget action films and direct-to-video releases, the kind of movies that played in video stores but rarely in theaters. Alienator came in 1990, a low-budget science fiction film that went straight to video. In 1991, he appeared in Raw Nerve with Tracy Lords, a suspense thriller that barely registered with audiences. The Deadly Avenger followed in 1992, Deadly Heroes in 1993. These films had titles that sounded like parodies of action movies, and in many ways they were. They were made cheap, shot fast, and released quietly. In 1994, he traveled to South Africa to appear in Ipitombi, a movie produced and directed by Tommy Meyer Fire, and based on a musical by Bertha Egnos. It was the kind of work that took him far from Hollywood, to places where his name still meant something, where producers would still take a chance on him. Ice Cream Man arrived in 1995, a black comedy horror film with Clint Howard that had a very limited theatrical release. Over time, it would achieve cult status as an unintentional comedy, but at the time, it was just another low-budget project for an actor whose options were dwindling. Lethal Orbit came in 1996, another direct-to-video action film that few people saw. While he was in the hospital that year, recovering from the accident that broke his neck, he was somehow still being committed to roles. Red Line with Chad McQueen, where he played a character named Keller, was one of those projects. But the quality of the work kept declining. The budgets got smaller. The productions got shoddier. Jan Michael Vincent, who had once earned $200,000 per episode on television, was now taking whatever work he could get just to survive. In 1998, he appeared in Buffalo 66, Vincent Gallo's acclaimed independent film. It was a small role, but it was in a film that critics loved, a film that showed Jan Michael could still do good work when given the chance. But chances like that were rare. His last film credit came in 2002, a gang movie called White Boy that was barely released and quickly forgotten. After that, nothing. Jan Michael Vincent retired from acting, not by choice but by necessity. The offers had stopped completely. His health was failing. His money was gone. The career was over. These weren't the films of a movie star. These were the films of a man taking whatever work he could get, trying to stay relevant, trying to stay employed. But mostly, they were the films of a man whose demons had won, whose talent had been consumed by addiction, whose beauty had faded into broken health and shattered dreams. The Accident. Then came 1996, and everything got worse. The details remain somewhat murky, even now. Jan Michael Vincent was involved in a car accident in Mission Viejo, California. He had been drinking. Some reports said he was chasing a girlfriend he'd been fighting with, another violent episode in a life full of them. Whatever the exact circumstances, the crash was devastating. The impact broke his neck. For a man who had spent his career doing physical roles, playing action heroes and surfers and stuntmen, a broken neck should have been fatal. But he survived. Barely. Paramedics arrived at the scene and found him in critical condition. They had to insert a tube down his throat to save his life, to keep him breathing while they rushed him to the hospital. That tube, pushed down in an emergency, scraped against his vocal cords and damaged them permanently. When Jan Michael spoke after that, his voice was different, rougher, harder to understand, damaged. For an actor, losing your voice is like a pianist losing their fingers. It's not just a physical injury, it's the loss of one of your primary tools. Jan Michael's voice had been part of his appeal, part of his presence on screen. Now it was broken, just like so much else. He spent weeks in the hospital recovering from the broken neck. Physical therapy, pain medication, the slow, agonizing process of learning to function again with a body that had betrayed him, or that he had betrayed through decades of abuse. It's hard to say which. In a 2007 interview, when asked about the 1996 accident, Jan Michael said something that was either deeply sad or deeply revealing. "You know, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't remember being in an accident." Whether he truly didn't remember or simply didn't want to talk about it, no one can say for certain. The brain does strange things to protect itself from trauma. Memory can fade or be suppressed, or maybe Jan Michael just didn't want to rehash one of the lowest points in his life with an interviewer, but the accident marked a turning point. After 1996, Jan Michael Vincent's career essentially ended. He appeared in Buffalo 66 in 1998, a small role in Vincent Gallo's acclaimed independent film. His last film credit came in 2002, a gang movie called White Boy that was barely released and quickly forgotten. Then came 2008 and another car accident, another collision, another reminder that Jan Michael Vincent couldn't seem to stop destroying himself, one crash at a time, and then came the infection that would take his leg. Patricia Ann. Somewhere in all this darkness, Jan Michael Vincent found something like salvation. Her name was Patricia Ann Christ, born July 9, 1953 in the United States. She came from a different world than Jan Michael, a world without Hollywood glamour or the constant temptation of fame and fortune. They had first met when Jan Michael was working on Airwolf in the mid-1980s, back when he was still the highest paid actor on television, when the world still saw him as a star. But something happened, and they lost touch for years. Life took them in different directions. Jan Michael went through his second divorce, through more accidents, through the slow decline of his career and health. Years later, they reconnected, and this time, it stuck. In June 2000, they married. Jan Michael was 55 years old. His career was essentially over. His reputation was in tatters. His body was already showing the damage from decades of abuse and accidents. Anyone could see that life with Jan Michael Vincent would be difficult at best, but Patricia saw something else. Or maybe she saw all of it and chose to stay anyway. She didn't marry the golden boy of the 1970s, the heartthrob who had women swooning in theaters. She didn't marry the highest paid actor on television. She married a broken man with a broken body and a history of terrible choices. And she stayed. Patricia was Jan Michael's third wife, and by all accounts, his most devoted. Where his first two marriages had ended in divorce and recrimination, with restraining orders and allegations of abuse, his third marriage endured. Not because it was easy, but because Patricia was willing to do the hard work of loving someone who had spent years destroying himself. The wedding wasn't a Hollywood affair. There were no paparazzi, no tabloid coverage, no cameras, just two people making vows to each other, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. Those vows would be tested in ways most people never experience. By 2012, Jan Michael's health had deteriorated to the point of crisis. He contracted an infection in his right leg, a complication from peripheral artery disease. The infection wouldn't heal, antibiotics weren't working, the tissue was dying, and the infection was spreading. The doctors gave Patricia the news. They would have to amputate 2 sections of the lower half of his right leg, and they told her something else too. Given Jan Michael's overall frail health, there was a real chance he wouldn't survive the surgery. Patricia had to make the decision: keep the leg and watch the infection kill him slowly, or risk the surgery and possibly lose him on the operating table. She chose the surgery. He survived. He woke up with a prosthetic right foot and sometimes needed a wheelchair to get around. The man who had once surfed all over the world, who had done his own stunts in films, who had held a helicopter pilot license in the 1980s, now relied on a wheelchair and his wife for basic mobility. Patricia took care of him. She was there through the surgeries, through the recovery, through the daily indignities of a body that had been pushed beyond its limits. She helped him with the wheelchair. She helped him with the prosthetic. She helped him navigate a world that had become much smaller and much harder. They lived quietly, away from the spotlight, in North Carolina. The Hollywood years were long gone. The money was gone. The fame was gone. What remained was just two people, one caring for the other, day after day, year after year. The end. February 10th, 2019. Mission Hospital Memorial Campus in Asheville, North Carolina. Jan Michael Vincent was 74 years old, though various sources list his birth year as both 1944 and 1945. He had been admitted to the hospital as an inpatient. His heart stopped. Cardiac arrest with bradycardia, a decreased heart rate, listed as an underlying cause. The doctors tried, but there was nothing to be done. Jan Michael Vincent died in that hospital bed, with Patricia by his side. The world didn't know immediately. His death wasn't publicly announced until March 8th, nearly a month later, when TMZ broke the news and published a slightly redacted copy of his death certificate. By then, he had already been cremated. The announcement shocked people who remembered him from Airwolf, from Big Wednesday, from The Mechanic, from all those 1970s films where he'd been young and beautiful and seemingly invincible. How could he be dead? How could so much time have passed? Jan Michael Vincent died broke. He died in obscurity. He died with a body ravaged by accidents and disease and decades of substance abuse. The Hollywood heartthrob who had once been Universal's choice to play oceanographer Matt Hooper in Jaws, a role that went to Richard Dreyfuss instead, ended his life in a hospital room far from the cameras and the fame and the adoring crowds. Patricia's burden. Patricia Ann Christ Vincent was left behind to handle what remained. No autopsy was performed. Jan Michael was cremated, his ashes scattered or kept private, the details never made public. Patricia inherited not a fortune, but the memories of caring for a man who had once been larger than life and who had shrunk, year by year, into someone who needed her for everything. She had been with him for 19 years, longer than either of his previous marriages. She had seen him at his worst and stayed anyway. The doctors had warned her he might not survive the amputation. She had prepared herself for his death more than once. But preparation doesn't make it easier, it just makes it expected. After Jan Michael died, Patricia largely disappeared from public view. She gave no interviews, she made no statements, she simply returned to the quiet life she and Jan Michael had been living. A life without cameras or questions or people demanding to know what happened to the golden boy. What does the widow of a fallen star carry with her? The memories of who he was when they met? The reality of who he became? The knowledge that she stayed when others left? All of it probably. All of it at once. What remains? Jan Michael Vincent is survived by his third wife, Patricia Ann Christ, and his daughter Amber Vincent from his first marriage. He left behind a filmography that spans from the late 1960s to 2002, a career that had incredible highs and devastating lows. He left behind people who remember him as Stringfellow Hawk, the brooding helicopter pilot who could play the cello, people who remember him as Matt in Big Wednesday, riding waves and running from responsibility, people who remember him as the beautiful young man who worked alongside John Wayne and Charles Bronson and Burt Reynolds. He also left behind a cautionary tale, a man who had everything and lost it, not to bad luck or cruel fate, but to his own demons. A man who made terrible choices and paid for them with his career, his health, his life. But perhaps most importantly, he left behind a wife who loved him enough to stay, who cared for him when he couldn't care for himself, who was there at the end, in that hospital room in North Carolina, when the golden boy's heart finally stopped. The legacy of loss. In the years since Jan Michael Vincent's death, there have been occasional remembrances. Fan groups dedicated to Airwolf still exist online. Big Wednesday continues to find new audiences among surfers and film enthusiasts. His 1970s films play on late-night television and streaming services, introducing younger generations to a face they've never seen before. When people watch those old films now, they see a young man full of promise and potential. They see the kind of natural charisma that can't be taught or faked. They see what Hollywood saw when that talent scout first noticed him after his National Guard service. What they don't see is what came after. The broken neck, the damaged vocal cords, the amputated leg, the years of addiction and violence and failed relationships, the quiet ending in a North Carolina hospital. David Grove, who wrote a biography titled Jan Michael Vincent, Edge of Greatness, said something telling in a 2017 interview. He had tremendous natural ability, and that was his curse. Natural ability without discipline, beauty without substance, fame without the tools to handle it. Jan Michael Vincent had all the gifts and none of the guardrails, and he paid for it. The aftermath. Patricia Ann Christ Vincent, according to the limited information available, continued living quietly after Jan Michael's death. Some estimates placed her net worth between $100,000 and $300,000, modest sums considering her late husband had once been the highest paid actor on television. But money had never been the point of their relationship. She had married him in 2000, when his career was essentially over, when his reputation was in tatters, when anyone could see that life with Jan Michael Vincent would be difficult at best, and she had stayed for 19 years, through the 2012 amputation that might have killed him, through the wheelchairs and the prosthetics, and the daily reality of caring for someone whose body was failing, the nature of their relationship, the details of their daily life together, the conversations they had in those final years. All of that remains private. Patricia has never sought publicity or attention. She has never written a tell-all book or given interviews about life with a fallen star. She simply lived with him, cared for him, and mourned him when he was gone. In an age where everything is public, where every detail of celebrity lives gets dissected and analyzed, there's something almost noble in that silence. Jan Michael Vincent's story isn't unique in Hollywood. The trajectory of early success followed by addiction, violence, and decline has been repeated many times, but each iteration is its own tragedy. Each person, their own cautionary tale. What makes Jan Michael's story particularly poignant is how completely he fell. From the highest paid actor on television to dying broke in a North Carolina hospital. From being Universal's choice for Jaws to appearing in direct-to-video films that few people saw. From surfing all over the world to needing a wheelchair to get around. The 1990s saw him involved in 3 severe automobile collisions, any one of which could have killed him. He survived them all, only to die from cardiac arrest at 74, his body worn out from decades of abuse. In a 2007 interview, when told he had once been bigger than Brad Pitt, Jan Michael responded, "I don't even know who Brad Pitt is." When told he had been one of the highest paid people on television, he said, This is the first time I ever thought about that. I never thought about being the highest paid. Whether that was selective memory, genuine forgetfulness, or a defense mechanism, it's impossible to say, but it speaks to how far he had fallen, how disconnected he had become from the person he used to be. A final word. The awful ending and tragic death of Jan Michael Vincent isn't just about one man's decline. It's about the price of fame, the dangers of addiction, the long fall from grace that can happen when talent isn't enough. It's also about Patricia Ann Christ, who married a man everyone else had given up on and stayed with him until the end, who cared for him when he was sick, who was there when he died, who continued living quietly after he was gone. Jan Michael Vincent left this world on February 10th, 2019, in a hospital room far from Hollywood, far from the cameras, far from the adoring fans who had once made him the highest paid actor on television. He left behind a wife, a daughter, a body of work, and a warning. Natural ability isn't enough. Beauty fades, fame is fleeting, and the demons we carry with us don't care how beautiful we are, how talented we are, or how much money we make. They just wait. And eventually, if we let them, they win. If this story moved you, if you remember Jan Michael Vincent from his glory days, or if you're learning about him for the first time, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We tell the stories that need to be told, the ones that remind us that behind every famous face is a human being with struggles, triumphs, and ultimately an ending. Jan Michael Vincent was once the golden boy of Hollywood. He ended his life as a cautionary tale, but in between, he was a man who loved surfing, who flew helicopters, who played the cello, who made movies that people still watch and remember. And he was loved by Patricia Ann Christ, who stayed when others left, who cared when others abandoned him, who was there at the end. Rest in peace, Jan Michael Vincent. You deserved better than the life you lived. And Patricia, wherever you are, thank you for staying.